So good morning. It's good to be here with you for this very special service where we lift up the legacies of those we've loved and lost. The poet Mary Oliver writes in her poem In Blackwater Woods, "Look, the trees are turning their own bodies into pillars of light, are giving off the rich fragrance of cinnamon and fulfillment. The long tapers of cattails are bursting and floating away over the blue shoulders of the ponds, and every pond, no matter what its name, is nameless now. Every year, everything I have ever learned in my lifetime leads back to this. The fires and the black river of loss whose other side is salvation, whose meaning none of us will ever know. To live in this world, you must be able to do three things: to love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing your own life depends upon it, and when the time comes to let it go, to let it go." It is that time of year again when the world reminds us that most of what we love is mortal. All of the people we love are mortal, and so are we. So we'll take the time to honor our beloved dead, to remember our ancestors. We'll reflect on the ways they live on in us, and we'll let our hearts open to the reality that the legacies of love we will leave in our own brief time here on earth are, at the end, our only certain claim to immortality. So a Catholic priest, a Protestant pastor, and a rabbi are discussing what they'd like people to say after they die when their bodies are on display in open caskets. And the priest said, "I'd like someone to say, I think he was righteous, honest, and generous." The pastor said, "I'd like someone to say he was kind and fair and he was good to his parishioners." The rabbi said, "I'd want someone to say, look, he's moving." The truth is that none of us get out of here alive. Our mortality is as much a part of us as our bodies, our minds, our experiences, and our stories. It's also as much a part of us as our grief and all of the other feelings and emotions that weave through our lives. Our cultural norms point us toward denying death, distancing ourselves from it, seeing it as the enemy. It used to be that when someone died, the people closest to him or her would tenderly wash the body, wrap it in a shroud, build a coffin, dig a hole. They would do something concrete to honor the life that had ended. There was no distance between the living and death. Those hands-on tasks, washing, wrapping, building, digging, provided an opportunity to grieve and a chance to witness what death looks like. By the time a person reached adulthood, they would have already sat at the bedside of a family member. Everyone knew what a death rattle sounded like, knew what a dead body looked like, felt like, smelled like. Even children were allowed to see and touch dead bodies. Death was normal. It was a natural part of life. These days, when someone is coming to the end of their life, things sometimes feel strange and alien. The routine, the process, the logistics of death are no longer familiar. They're no longer woven into our everyday lives. And as a result, I think each loss feels terrifying and catastrophic. And it is. Death is always catastrophic. But what I'm saying is there used to be a time when it was catastrophic, but it was also expected, and perhaps not as scary. Death doesn't have to be confusing and strange. We shouldn't be afraid of grief either. Grief isn't something to be avoided at all costs. Grief is the process that heals us after loss. This is Right Protection by Naomi Rachel Remen.
Over the years, many people in the midst of life transitions have told me that they've not really lost anything because loss is an illusion. There is no loss, there's only learning, they have said, obviously sincere in their belief. But I wonder, perhaps at the highest level of enlightenment, this may indeed be true, but it is questionable if anyone has ever reached this nirvana without experiencing their losses first. At the level of daily life, there certainly is loss. If we spiritualize it away, we can't use it to grow. If, as Ram Dass suggests, life is the ultimate spiritual teacher, we cannot learn unless we attend school. This usually means allowing ourselves to be touched by life and to participate in it. We learn by experience. The unexperienced life does not teach anybody anything. There are no spiritual shortcuts. We cannot protect ourselves from loss. The best we can do is to avoid feeling our losses. Some of the ways we do this are truly breathtaking. 2 weeks after she completed an extremely difficult chemotherapy, one of my patients lost all of her possessions when her house burned to the ground in a fire. Not a shred of clothing, not a letter, not a piece of jewelry, not a picture of her children or her parents or her wedding remained. I was horrified to hear this, and when she came to my office the following week, I put my arms around her, telling her how sorry I was to hear of her loss. She hugged me close for a moment, then stepping back, she looked me in the eye. "I never really liked the kitchen," she said. The important thing about the many strategies we use to shelter ourselves from feeling loss is that none of them leads to healing. Although denial, rationalization, substitution, avoidance, and the like may numb the pain of loss, every one of them hurts us in some far more fundamental ways. None is respectful toward life and toward process. None acknowledge our capacity for finding meaning or wisdom. Pain often marks the place where self-knowledge and growth can happen, much in the same way that fear does. Grieving is the way that loss can heal. Yet many people do not know how to grieve and heal their losses. This makes it hard to find the courage to participate fully in life. At some deep level, it may make us unwilling to be open-hearted or present, to become attached or intimate. We trust our bodies to heal because of the gift of 1 billion years of biological evolution. But how might you live if you did not know that your body could heal? Would you ride your bike, drive a car, use a knife to cut up your dinner? Or would you never get off the couch? Many people have become emotional couch potatoes because they do not know that they can heal their hearts. Unless we learn to grieve, we may need to live life at a distance in order to protect ourselves from pain. We may not be able to risk having anything that really matters to us, or allow ourselves to be touched, to be intimate, to care, or to be cared about. Untouched, we'll suffer anyway. We just will not be transformed by our suffering. Grieving may be one of the most fundamental life skills. It is the way that the heart can heal from loss and go on to love again and grow wise. If it were up to me, it would be taught in kindergarten, right up there with taking turns and sharing. So, how and when did you learn to grieve? Are there losses you've hidden from or tucked away? Has fear of loss or grief kept you from risking love? Do you trust your heart to heal? We can savor our grief without getting stuck in it. We can let it wash over us and through us without being afraid that we will lose ourselves. We can greet our grief as a beloved friend. We can let our soul stretch so that it accommodates our grief and still leaves room for everything else. We can remember the love lost and notice the ways we carry a legacy of love forward with us. We can trust that no action, no love, however so small, is ever wasted, and trusting that we can love profligately, spreading goodness and joy while we are alive.
So just a few weeks ago, I discovered a stunningly beautiful book called The Cure for Sorrow by Jan Richardson. It's a book of blessings that she wrote in the year after the death of her husband. And this is one called Blessing for the Brokenhearted. It begins with a quote by Henry David Thoreau. there is no remedy for love, but to love more. Let us agree for now that we will not say the breaking makes us stronger, or that it is better to have this pain than to have done without this love. Let us promise we will not tell ourselves time will heal the wound, when every day our waking opens it anew. Perhaps for now it can be enough to simply marvel at the mystery of how a heart so broken can go on beating, as if it were made for precisely this. As if it knows the only cure for love is more of it, as if it sees the heart's sole remedy for breaking is to love still, as if it trusts that its own persistent pulse is the rhythm of a blessing we cannot begin to fathom, one that will save us nonetheless.
Grief plays a key role in our process of becoming. The better we are at embracing loss as an inevitable part of life, the more bravely we can embrace joy and risk love. This is On Pain by Khalil Gibran. Your pain is the breaking of the shell that encloses your understanding. Even as the stone of the fruit must break so that its heart may stand in the sun, so must you know pain. And could you keep your heart in wonder at the daily miracles of your life, your pain would not seem less wondrous than your joy. And you would accept the seasons of your heart even as you have always accepted the seasons that pass over your fields. And you would watch with serenity through the winters of your grief. Much of your pain is self-chosen. It is the bitter potion by which the physician within you heals your sick self. Therefore, trust the physician. Drink his remedy in silence and tranquility. For his hand, though heavy and hard, is guided by the tender hand of the unseen. And the cup he brings, though it burn your lips, has been fashioned of the clay which the potter has moistened with his own sacred tears.
We can be honest here. We can admit that grief hurts. It impacts our minds. I talk about bereavement brain. When we're grieving, we become forgetful, easily confused, terribly distracted. It impacts our bodies. It makes us tired, achy, more prone to sickness. Grieving, we often struggle with sleeping and eating, the most fundamental practices of self-care. And of course, it wreaks havoc with our hearts, our emotions. Grief isn't something we have control over, and I think that's part of what makes it scary sometimes. We never know what's going to trigger a wave of grief, and we can't choose whether it's a gentle wave that washes over us and leaves us with a sense of bittersweet nostalgia, or a huge wave that sucks us back into the depth and scours our skin raw all over again. We can be honest here, and we have to be honest because it's our capacity to admit that it's like this for everyone that allows us to be present to one another in our grief. If you get swept off your feet by a wave of grief, you need to know that you won't be judged or abandoned, but gently helped to stand back up and held tenderly while you cry. There will be no fixing, no theologizing, just acceptance and witness and love. When you have been grieving, who has been there to comfort you? What were the things they said and did that were helpful? Who have you comforted, and how?
This poem is called Solace Blessing, also by Jan Richardson. That's it. That's all this blessing knows how to do. Shine your shoes, fill your refrigerator, water your plants, make some soup. all the things you cannot think to do yourself when the world has come apart, when nothing will be normal again. Somehow, this blessing knows precisely what you need, even before you know. It sees what will bring the deepest solace for you. It senses what will offer the kindest grace. And so it will step with such quietness into the ordinary moments where the absence is the deepest. It will enter with such tenderness into the hours where the sorrow is most keen. You do not even have to ask. Just leave it open, your door, your heart, your day, in every aching moment it holds. See what solace spills through the gaps your sorrow has torn. See what comfort comes to visit, holding out its gifts in each compassionate hand.
It's our practice as part of this service to come forward, to set photographs on the altar, to light candles, to drop stones, and to say the names of our beloved dead. To introduce this time of ritual, these are the words of my colleague, Christine Robinson. At this darkening time of the year, our thoughts turn to things past, to life retreating, to those who are no longer with us. Images come to our minds of dear companions who once graced our lives, loved ones whom we miss, persons whose lives made an impact on our lives. Of all those who were here, contributing, caring, and are now gone. Our memories bring both joy and sadness. Let us not push those feelings away, for our recollections attest to the enduring importance of these friends, this love, our memories. In the silence, let us remember them.
In the daily weave of our lives, those who have died are still strong, guiding threads. Theirs is the golden glimmer, or perhaps the brilliant red, or the melancholy blue. Still, they are part of the whole cloth of our lives. They are the ancestors, the goers before. Through this, we know immortality. In the hour-to-hour rush of our daily tasks, they travel with us through something they taught us, which is now ours to do, through something they loved, which is now ours to carry out, through something we shared, which is now ours alone, and yet not. Through this, we know immortality. In the minute-to-minute grasp of where we are, we remember the joys our departed gave us, which opened us up to hope, the sorrows we knew together, which taught us strength, the life shared, which is now ours to steward. Through this, we know immortality. In the second-to-second pulse of life, we sense the spirit of those we have loved and lost. This presence is too shy for naming, too amorphous for full knowing, and yet as real as the days we shared. Through this, we know immortality. They are more than remembered. They are memory itself. For what we love lives on in the way our beloved dead accompany us through life. Their words and wisdom our guide, their humor our relief, their restless concern for the world our charge. Through this, we know immortality. I invite you now to reflect on your beloved dead. What are the legacies you carry forward? What did they teach you, or gift you, or inspire in you? How did they change you? And then I invite you to reflect on your own life. You will someday be someone else's beloved dead. Your picture may be on this altar. You will be someone's ancestor. Does that shift in perspective impact who you are and how you are in this world?
Can we understand grief not as a cost or a punishment, but as a bridge? A bridge that leads us from love to love. This last reading is called Enduring Blessing by Jan Richardson again. What I really want to tell you is just to lay this blessing on your forehead, on your heart, Let it rest in the palm of your hand, because there's hardly anything this blessing could say, any word it could offer to fill the hollow. Let this blessing work its way into you with its lines that hold nearly unspeakable lament. Let this blessing settle into you with its hope, more ancient than knowing. Hear how this blessing has not come alone, how it echoes with the voices of those who accompany you, who attend you in every moment, who continually whisper this blessing to you. Hear how they do not cease to walk with you, even when the dark is deepest. Hear how they encompass you always, breathing this blessing to you, bearing this blessing to you, always. What we do matters. Who we are matters. We make ripples in the fabric of existence, and those ripples take the shape of our most deeply held values. Justice, kindness, grace, unconditional acceptance, radical hospitality, love above all. So be it, and so may it be.